Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to really get under the surface of complex topics, aiming for clarity and, well, keeping things engaging. Today we're headed to Africa, a continent, 1.4 billion people, 55 nations. It's vast, it's diverse, and right now it's the scene of this really high-stakes showdown over the future of finance. We're talking about crypto specifically.
Absolutely.
And the battle lines are drawn. On one side, you've got Luno, an exchange born in Africa, Cape Town, actually. They're all about trust, local roots, playing by the rules.
The homegrown contender, you could say.
Exactly. And on the other, the global giant, Binance, just massive scale, super fast expansion, and, well, a strategy that definitely pushes boundaries sometimes.
Very different beast altogether.
Totally. So the core question is, who wins this? This kind of Wild West frontier for digital money in Africa. And maybe more importantly, what does it all mean for African economies, for the regulators trying to figure this all out, and yeah, for you listening as a global citizen, maybe even an investor? That's our mission today. Unpack the history, the background, the real factors driving this rivalry to get a sense of what's truly at stake. Oh, and just a quick but important heads up. Everything we're talking about today, it's all based on public info, news reports, company statements, public records, just so we're clear.
It's a good place to start because the crypto story in Africa is, well, it's explosive and unique. The adoption rates are just phenomenal.
It's not just trading charts.
Not at all. This isn't just speculation like you might see elsewhere. It's really woven into the fabric of daily life for a lot of people. We're seeing folks in Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa using crypto to, protect their savings from really nasty inflation, to pay school fees. I mean, basic necessities. And even, in some pretty striking cases, to organize and fund protests when other channels are blocked.
Wow.
Yeah, it's deeply embedded. And it's not some niche thing for tech bros either. There was this survey, DeQuenke did it, July 2025, found that Gen Z makes up 54% of crypto users on both Binance and Luno across Africa.
54%, that's huge.
It's massive. It tells you something profound. For a huge chunk of young Africans, traditional finance isn't just hard to access, it's almost culturally irrelevant for some. Crypto isn't the alternative. It's kind of the default starting point.
That completely flips the script.
It really does. But, and this is key, the whole environment is still pretty chaotic, mostly unregulated, moving incredibly fast. It's dynamic, to say the least.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit and start with Luno, the local player you mentioned. Founded 2013, Cape Town. Their big idea was making Bitcoin accessible across Africa.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious, especially back then. But they hit a wall pretty early on, didn't they? Like a real punch to the gut. 2014, Kenya, there was some kind of banking freeze.
That's right. Essentially, their banking partners pulled the plug, forced them completely out of the Kenyan market.
Ouch. What does that tell you?
Well, it was a brutal early lesson. Showed just how challenging the regulatory side and even basic financial infrastructure was going to be. Trust wasn't just about the tech. It was about navigating these, entrenched systems. A real moment of truth.
But they didn't give up. They stuck with it. Fast forward, and they're back. Over 15 million users now.
Yeah, quite the comeback story. They're in over 40 countries. Crucially, they got licensed in South Africa, which really signals their commitment to working with regulators.
And they relaunched in Kenya.
They did, yeah, offering Kenyan shilling trading pairs now. It shows persistence, right? Belief in that original mission, even after getting burned.
So what's their angle now? What makes Luno?
Their whole strategy, their playbook, it's built around one word: legitimacy. Legitimacy through compliance.
Yeah.
They constantly talk about trust. They actively engage with regulators. They even do these quarterly proof of reserves audits.
To show they actually have the assets they claim.
Exactly. Transparency. It's a core part of their pitch. And they're not just talking, they're doing it. Formal dialogues with the Central Bank of Kenya, the Capital Markets Authority, the Financial Reporting Center, the key players.
They're betting that people actually want regulation.
That's the bet. Luno argues there's this huge, untapped market of people who actually prefer clarity and transparency. They even claim P2P platforms haven't cracked more than maybe 20% of the potential market because of this desire for, well, something more stable.
Interesting. So the slow and steady compliance-first approach might actually tap into a deeper need for trust, especially in emerging markets.
That seems to be their calculation. That perceived stability could, in the long run, win out over rapid, maybe less regulated growth.
But look, it's not easy. They're still under immense pressure. They talk about facing global Goliaths, P2P insurgents, and legacy banks that don't like being disrupted. It's a tough fight. Okay, let's talk about one of those global Goliaths. Enter Binance. Founded 2017 and just boom, global dominance incredibly quickly.
Phenomenal speed, yeah.
And their Africa strategy seems different. Very aggressive, you said.
Very. They really went hard on peer-to-peer, P2P trading. And smartly, they often partnered with existing local mobile money agents.
Ah, so tapping into networks already on the ground.
Exactly. It gave them instant widespread access, even where banks are scarce. Super effective for getting market share fast.
And regulation, how do they approach that? It seems complicated.
It is. You've got their head of legal for Africa publicly saying Kenya's VASP bill is, good progress.
Okay, so engaging there.
But almost in the same breath, urging regulators, hey, don't tax this new industry too heavily. Don't stifle innovation.
It's a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it? Praising progress while pushing back on specifics.
That's a good way to put it. And look, there's this sort of regulatory dust, let's call it, that seems to follow Binance around globally. It's just a pattern.
Like in Nigeria, that situation sounds intense.
It is intense. Nigeria declared Binance illegal in 2023. Then, earlier this year, 2024, two of their executives were actually arrested.
Arrested. Wow. What are the charges?
Serious stuff. Market manipulation, a huge amount in alleged back taxes, something like $33 billion, and this massive $79 billion charge linked to supposedly illicit transactions flowing through their platform. It's a major ongoing legal battle.
Okay, that's one extreme. But you mentioned agility.
Right. Contrast that with South Africa. In April 2025, Binance started implementing travel rule compliance there.
The rule about identifying senders and receivers?
Exactly. For transfers over R5,000. It's a standard anti-money laundering thing in traditional finance. So they can comply when they feel they have to.
So comply where necessary, push back where possible.
That seems to be the strategy. Be agile. But that constant push and pull inevitably brings scrutiny. Like in Kenya, remember that VASP bill? One version got slammed because critics alleged Binance had way too much influence in drafting it.
Accusations of being a policy proxy.
Precisely. Those are the words used. It raises serious questions about influence.
It's fascinating. So how do they keep dominating with all this baggage? Is it just their sheer size? Or are they just really good at playing in these gray zones, maybe using that global scale to sway things locally?
It's likely a combination of factors. Scale certainly helps. Network effects are powerful in this space. And perhaps they are just very adept at navigating complex, sometimes ambiguous regulatory environments.
Which brings us squarely back to that Kenyan VASP bill. You said it was pivotal. Let's zero in on that. What was it trying to do?
The basic idea sounds sensible enough. Mandate licenses for virtual asset service providers VASP, so exchanges like Luno and Binance. Oversight from both the central bank and the Capital Markets Authority.
Putting some rules in place. Sounds needed, right?
You'd think so. But it became incredibly controversial. That one version we mentioned, the one supposedly influenced by Binance, it triggered this massive public outcry. NGOs, ordinary Kenyans submitting comments. Real pushback.
Concerns about regulatory capture.
Exactly that. The fear that the rules were being written to favor one dominant player, potentially locking out competition or ignoring risks. The noise got so loud, the Kenyan government actually had to hit pause, pull back that flawed bill.
So this bill really highlights a fundamental tension, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's the classic battle. How do you protect and encourage innovation, this new crypto potential, while also protecting consumers and maybe the existing financial institutions who, let's be honest, often feel threatened?
Could Binance's global clout, their lobbying power, actually end up, well, drowning out a local player like Luno? Is that a realistic fear?
It's a very real question people are asking. And it's not like there are no tools to fight back. Kenya's Competition Authority actually has draft rules targeting anti-competitive behavior. We're talking potentially big fines, even jail time. So the legal framework is there, at least in theory.
But the outcome in Kenya matters beyond its borders.
Hugely. This isn't just about Kenya. What happens there sets a massive precedent for the rest of East Africa. Uganda, Rwanda, they're all watching closely. Kenya's decision could easily become the template for the whole region. It's a domino effect waiting to happen.
Okay, let's pull back for the big picture. Why does this corporate rivalry matter so much for Africa as a whole? What are the larger stakes?
Well, first, think about financial inclusion. It's a massive issue. In Kenya, you said 65% of people don't have a bank account.
That's right, but 84% have mobile money access. Huge gap.
Exactly. So crypto has this incredible potential to just leapfrog the old banking system, right? Bring financial services to millions who've been excluded. But that only works if it's safe and people trust it. That's where regulation becomes critical.
And then there's the leadership aspect, geopolitics almost.
Sort of, yeah. Tech leadership. You see South Africa's FSCA taking the lead on meeting global standards, like FATF compliance for anti-money laundering. Kenya wants to do the same. The policies these leading economies adopt, they don't just stay local. They influence neighbors, shape how the entire continent engages with the global digital economy. It's about setting the standard.
This really touches on fundamental governance issues too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You hear people like Akinwumi Adesina from the Africa Debt Bank talking about state capture, the risk of private interest, basically hijacking government policy for their own benefit. He stresses that tackling this is vital to attract investment
And that connects back to crypto.
directly. The fight over crypto regulation, the fears of regulatory capture we talked about, it's being seen as a really important test case for governance in Africa. Can these countries build robust, fair rules for a disruptive new industry? Or will powerful interests dominate? It's a barometer, really.
So we're seeing these two very different models clash. Luno, regulated, trusted, rooted in Africa. Emphasis on compliance, local understanding.
Right. Deep roots, playing the long game of trust.
Versus Binance, global scale, local reach, frictionless trading, all about access, speed, agility.
Exactly. Prioritizing getting big, fast, and making it easy to trade, often through that P2P network.
And this creates friction. Luno points fingers at a lack of transparency in Binance's P2P operations.
While Binance says, hey, Kenya's making progress, but don't regulate us too tightly. And then you have that really explosive accusation, denied, we should say, from Binance's former CEO, about Nigerian officials allegedly asking for bribes.
Right, highlighting the friction with authorities.
It just underscores the tension. Can these two radically different philosophies actually coexist in the same markets long term? Or is one model inevitably going to squeeze the other out, setting the dominant path for crypto across Africa? It's a fundamental question.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear this Luno versus Binance fight is way more than just business. It's really a crucible for Africa's digital future, isn't it?
It really is.
It's weighing careful regulation against disruptive freedom. It's pitting deep-rooted trust against massive, fast scalability. And the next year or so looks critical. We need to watch Kenya's VASP Bill. Where does that finally land? Nigeria's huge tax lawsuit against Binance. How does that play out? And South Africa's push for FATF compliance. How does that reshape the landscape? These are the things that will likely decide who wins the trust battle with users and regulators.
Key inflection points, definitely.
So as this story keeps unfolding in government buildings and courtrooms, and crucially, on millions of mobile phones across the continent, you have to wonder, will Luno's focus on trust and legacy ultimately win out? Or will Binance's sheer global power and agility carry the day? And maybe the biggest question, whatever the outcome, what's the ultimate cost or benefit for innovation, for inclusion, and for basic integrity in these vital emerging markets?
You know, looking at this purely from a strategic perspective, for anyone interested in global business, there are some powerful lessons here. Well, first, that core strategic choice, compliance versus agility. Luno bets on deep regulatory integration for stability, long-term trust. Binance uses agility, that global-first approach, for rapid market entry, but it clearly attracts regulatory heat. What's the right balance?
Yep.
That's a question every global strategist faces.
Context matters too.
Hugely. Luno's African roots, that painful 2014 Kenya experience, clearly shaped their cautious, compliance-heavy comeback. Binance, meanwhile, brilliantly leveraged the existing mobile money networks for their P2P dominance, understanding current local infrastructure, different kinds of local insight.
And navigating uncertainty.
That's maybe the biggest challenge. Both are operating in markets that are often unregulated or just starting to write the rules. So how do you engage proactively? How do you handle political flack, like those policy proxy accusations? How do you adapt when new rules like the travel rule suddenly appear? Their different paths offer lessons there.
What about actually winning over users?
Again, contrasting approaches. Luno pushes transparency, those audits, as a direct trust-building play, a slower burn. Binance focuses on scale, variety of offerings, ease of use, betting on utility and network effect. How do you build trust in an industry that many still find complex or risky?
And finally, the rules themselves.
The power of precedent.
Right.
What happens in Kenya and Nigeria won't stay in Kenya and Nigeria. It will influence neighbors. So the ability to shape policy, or at least anticipate and navigate its twists and turns, becomes a critical strategic capability in these emerging markets. It's like watching a masterclass in real-time global strategy unfold.
That's the incredible story we're watching right now, and we invite you, our listeners, to keep watching it with us. As you think about everything we've discussed today, maybe consider, What really stands out to you? Which parts of this clash between trust and scale, regulation and speed resonate most with how you see global business evolving in our incredibly complex world?
You've been listening to Empire and Legacy, African Business Chronicles. Our hosts are Zuri Mwangi and Kwame Adeyemi. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, X, Instagram, and YouTube. All links are in the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform, and share this episode with fellow business leaders. Empire and Legacy is essential listening for business professionals and leaders. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Until next time.